Building your dream home or remodeling your kitchen? Skipping permits and ignoring codes could cost you more than expected. Today, we're sitting down with Hugh Stearns, a custom remodel expert right here in Bryan College Station, to break it all down.
Okay, we're talking about building codes and permits today. And these are really important. A lot of people, and we know we're in Texas and everybody wants to be a rugged individual. A lot of people want to keep government out of their lives. But the fact is that a home is owned by more than one family. It gets passed down. And so it becomes buyer beware, but there's so much behind the walls and in what goes into a home that we have to have codes so that we're passing on safe housing. So a lot of this has to do with safety, but a lot of it just also has to do to make sure that we've got a standard of building that's valuable. So one of the things that people look at in a community is how good is their building stock? And making sure that we've got a decent building stock is really important for the value of everybody's home. Just as a community, having a good building stock matters. And codes are a great way we can do that. And to be honest, codes are a minimum standard. So we always want to make sure we're following the requirements of the permit very closely and looking to exceed them where possible, because those are just minimum standards to make sure that somebody's building at least to a safe level. But most of the time we want to go above and beyond that. Just to provide some context of how codes are used, one would be spacing on outlets. What this does is keeps people from having to stretch cords long distances that create a trip hazard. So outlets have to be spaced every so far. Another example is windows in bedrooms. And this is a fire safety issue. The window has to be of a certain size and operable in a bedroom to make sure that somebody can get out in case of a fire. Stairs have lots of codes that go along with them that have to do with the rails, the height of the risers, the depth of the treads. All of these things create safe stairs. And of course, stairs can be very unsafe. So we want to make sure that we're following at least the minimum standard to create safety in stairs. In Bryan and College Station, we are very fortunate. Our code departments are wonderful. They work with us well. It's very easy for us to get permits in Bryan and College Station. You may hear local builders say otherwise because they haven't necessarily worked in other areas. But when I talk to my peers around the country and I tell them how quickly and easily we get permits, they're amazed. In San Francisco, I've known of projects that took more than a year and a half to get a permit. Austin is really difficult to get permits. And some of this it's for good reasons, but our code departments are great. They work with us. We consider them kind of part of our team because we want to make sure that we're hitting all the necessary codes, and our code departments work well with us to make sure that we're well informed on new codes and what needs to be done. Sometimes people are inclined to try to skip permits. It's not a good idea to do that. Our cities are made safe by our permit departments, and the cost of the permit is actually a fraction of the cost that it takes to maintain those offices. So for that reason alone, it's a good idea to make sure we're getting permits. But also later when you go to sell your house, if you've had work done that was unpermitted, it can really cause problems and issues for you at that time. So it's always a good idea to get permits where necessary. It's always a question, what do I need a permit for? And typically, if you're dealing with any of the infrastructure or anything structural, you definitely need a permit for. It's always a good idea to call the permit department and talk to them and make sure that you're good to go. If you're painting your house, you don't need a permit, but we apply for permits for just about every project. It doesn't have to become very much. For our existing clients, the people that we've done work for in the past, we'll do anything. We'll do small handyman type work. And we'll be pretty careful. We don't go very far before we're calling the permit office. One of the things that happens when people try to skip permits is they get discovered, and the permit office comes in, and then to see the structural work has to be undone. Drywall has to be pulled apart. And it can be worse if you don't get a permit to pour a foundation, for example. You'd have to potentially have to tear that foundation up because the work that's inspected is covered by concrete. So it's a really high risk to try to do something without permits. And once again, we just think it's just not a good idea at all. One of the things that codes does is protect us from inexperienced contractors. In Texas, you don't have to have a license to build a house or work on a house. And that means there's a lot of people coming in, they don't understand what it takes to run a construction business, and they're doing work. Well, one of the costs is not only the building code, but also making sure you're building to code. So one of the ways that you can protect yourself is make sure that anybody you're working with gets a permit, because then they'll have to follow those minimum standards. And if you're using somebody who's young and inexperienced, that can be important. As I had mentioned before, if you don't get permits, it can really get you in trouble at the time of sale. If there's unpermitted work that's been done, it will be revealed, and that can be a problem. Making sure that people know that any work you've had done has been permitted. One of the things that we love hearing, that we hear sometimes from realtors, is that people, when a remodeling project has been done by Stearns Design Build, realtors will use that as a selling attribute. So using a well-credited contractor is something that should be brought up at the time of sale. People care that a home's been taken care of and that it's been done by people who are qualified to do it. So that should be a sales virtue. But if you haven't taken those steps, it'll be a liability. One of the things people are often worried about in remodeling is that when they get a permit and the inspectors come in, that they're going to end up having to do a lot more. And occasionally this happens. It doesn't happen very often. Most things are grandfathered, but it's up to your contractor to make sure that they know what's grandfathered and what's not. And once again, if we look at the code department and the people who work for the city in this department as advocates, which they really are, then we can see them as helping us make sure our homes are safe and that the resale value is going to be good. So as we spoke about earlier, one way to make sure your contractor is going to be able to do the work that you're asking them to do is to make sure that they're getting the permit. That's a minimum standard. So when you're hiring a contractor, this is something you need to be sure of. There's a lot of things that you need to do to ensure that your contractors are legitimate. And this is just one of the many things. We have other resources that go into a wise process for hiring a contractor. But within the context of permits, that's just one of the many things that you need to do to make sure your contractor is legit. Finally, to those tempted to skip a permit to save time or money, as we've said before, it's likely to cost you a great deal more time and money. It can cost you more money because you have to uncover work you've already covered up. And it can cost you time because you'll have to go through the process, and doing it in the middle of a job can really create some problems. So just follow the process. It's not difficult. Our cities are great. They make it easy to do, and it's something that everybody should do.
Thanks so much for tuning in to episode 5 of our series, Common Remodeling Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. Are you thinking about a remodel? Don't gamble with your investment. Hire smart, build safe, and get it done right. Be sure to subscribe to our page so you don't miss any of our newest episodes.